You've got 14 minutes. That's how long it took for the first home invasion to happen in Louisville after the power grid failed in June 2024. Not at night, not in a sketchy alley. Broad daylight. One neighborhood lost 9 houses in under 2 hours, and 7 of those homes belonged to people who thought they were prepared. In 2024 alone, U.S. cities logged over 61,000 blackout-related burglaries. Nearly 71% of them were targeted, not random. Chosen because of small, innocent signs: trash, noise, smell, light, movement. These weren't mistakes. These were invitations. And if you think a padlock, a flashlight, or a no trespassing sign is going to stop a man who hasn't eaten in 4 days, you're already in the crosshairs. Let me show you the 8 mistakes that will get you looted, and you're probably making half of them right now. Let's go. 8. Opening your curtains. Ever. Let me say this as bluntly as I can. If your curtains are open, even just a crack, during a total blackout, you've already been made. Doesn't matter if the lights are off, doesn't matter if you're careful. Because in the absence of power, people aren't just looking for light. They're looking for shadows, for silhouettes, for motion. And when you're the only house on the block with any sign of life behind a fluttering curtain, you become a myth, a legend, a story of hope wrapped in warm glass. And in a starving neighborhood, that story ends in theft, or worse. Here's the psychology. In daylight, windows are just reflections, but in blackout conditions, windows are theaters. And if someone catches even 1 second of movement inside your home, a flicker of an arm, the outline of a head, the sway of a towel, they know 2 things instantly. 1. You're in there. 2. You're still functioning. And that's all it takes. You ever read about what happened in Mariupol during the early weeks of the invasion in 2022? Looters would post up blocks away with binoculars just to watch which homes still had shadow movement behind the glass. It wasn't even about light. It was about proof of life. And that became all the justification needed to break in. What's worse is how innocent the mistake is. You crack the curtain for 5 seconds to check the weather. You peel the blind just to peek outside. You open the shades because it's still daytime. And boom, confirmation. Someone saw it. And once that mental pin is dropped on your location, it stays. Because you're now part of their mental map. They'll walk past, watch again. Maybe they'll time it. Maybe they'll notice that you always crack the curtain at 7 p.m. to check the street. You've just given them a schedule. So how do you seal this vulnerability? First, blackout everything. Not just the windows, but the frames, the edges, the seams. Curtains aren't enough. Use layers. Blackout fabric, garbage bags, tinfoil, cardboard, all of it. If there's any doubt, sit in. Your yard at night. Look at your house and ask yourself, can I tell someone's home? If yes, fix it. Second, double up. 1 barrier inside, 1 outside. That stops silhouettes from casting. Third, lock the curtains shut with pins, clips, even duct tape. Gaps are death. Fourth, and this is next level, tint or paint your windows before the blackout ever hits. Yes, even just a semi-opaque film can save you from being clocked at a glance. Because in a blackout, windows don't protect you, they expose you. Every glance outside becomes a broadcast. Every open curtain becomes a confession. And the person watching doesn't need an invitation. They just need a reason. 7. Cooking with scent. Here's one that absolutely no one talks about because most people have never smelled desperation. Never been downwind of true hunger. But in a blackout, when food stops arriving and bellies go empty, smell becomes a radar. And if you're cooking anything that produces aroma, you've already lost the element of invisibility. Because smell travels, smell clings. And when someone hasn't eaten a hot meal in 3 days, the scent of grilled onions or reheated soup becomes a bloodhound trail straight to your door. Let's get specific. The average human can detect odors from over 1,000 different food compounds, but in crisis conditions, when background noise and city traffic vanish, our other senses go into overdrive. A 2018 study from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden found that olfactory sensitivity can spike by up to 32% in conditions of prolonged fasting. That means when the stomach's empty, the nose becomes a weapon. You thought a whiff of chicken broth was comforting? Try explaining that comfort when 3 strangers are knocking at your door, each holding an empty pot. In the 2021 freeze event in Texas, dozens of neighborhoods reported looters targeting homes that had been boiling water on outdoor grills or propane stoves. Not lights, not noise, scent. They followed it. Down the alley, around the block, past 20 dark homes, straight to the one that smelled like lentils. And if you're using spices, garlic, basil, you might as well hang a neon sign that says, "Family of 4, still eating hot." Now here's where it gets wild. Most people think they're being subtle. I'll just heat up something small. Wrong. A single can of beef stew heated on a camp stove can create a scent plume that travels over 100 feet in still air. Add wind, that scent can hit someone's nose 5 houses away. And don't get cocky with MREs or freeze-dried rations either. Those still release aroma when rehydrated, especially if you're using any kind of broth or warm water. So how do you fix it? First, cook early. Sunrise, windy hours, or during storms when noise and motion provide cover. Second, cook low and slow. Don't boil, don't grill, and for the love of safety, don't fry. Use minimal heat and cover pans tightly. Third, contain the smell. Cook in sealed environments, garages with exhaust vents, tents with carbon filters, even buried fire pits with limited oxygen flow. Fourth, go scent neutral. Canned beans, rice with salt, oatmeal. Bland equals invisible. Wipe everything down. Your clothes, your sleeves, even your hair. Because in the blackout, you're not cooking food. You're releasing a signal. And someone out there is starving just enough to follow it. 6. Wearing clean clothes. Outside. You ever seen someone walk through a war zone in pressed khakis and a fresh t-shirt? Because that's what it looks like when you step outside during a blackout wearing anything that smells like detergent, looks unwrinkled, or worse, matches. In a crisis, when the grid is down and the world's gone gray, even basic hygiene becomes a privilege. And the second you show up at your porch, in the street, or checking your perimeter looking clean, you've already told a dozen silent observers everything they need to know. You're still doing laundry. You've still got water. You've still got power. Nobody cares if you're clean. They care what it means, because in a blackout, survival is marked by decline. People get dirtier. Clothes get reworn. Smells change, and when you walk by in an outfit that's not stained, frayed, or layered like a panic-stricken onion, it doesn't register as coincidence. It registers as access. And access becomes a story. That guy on the corner with matching socks and a hoodie that smells like dryer sheets, he's doing better than we are. He's got resources. And in a collapsed world, resources don't get shared. They get stolen. Case in point, Haiti, 2010. In the aftermath of the earthquake, aid workers were briefed not to wear visibly clean clothing outside of secured zones. Why? Because even the appearance of hygiene became a magnet. There were dozens of recorded cases where NGO members were targeted not for food, but for the suggestion of access. Working toilets, functioning showers, potable water. The clean shirt became the flair. The same logic applies in your blackout suburb when you're the only one whose sweatshirt doesn't look slept in. The fix? Grime yourself down. I'm not kidding. You want camouflage? That's not just mud on your face. That's psychological misdirection. You want to blend in, you need to visually decay. First, rotate clothing and downgrade your outer layers. Even if you've got 30 clean shirts inside, don't wear them. Second, rub a bit of dirt, ash, or even cooking soot on your sleeves, knees, elbows. Don't overdo it. Just enough to say, I'm struggling like the rest of you. Third, skip the scents. No deodorant, no perfume, no detergent. If your clothes smell like anything other than wood smoke or sweat, it raises questions. And fourth, wear a little damage. A tear in the cuff, a frayed edge, even fake scuffs on shoes, they speak volumes. In a blackout, you're not dressing to express. You're dressing to depress. Look like you're losing and no one will think you're worth robbing. Look like you're winning and someone's going to come collect your prize. 5. Opening your door. Too often. You think it's safe just because you're behind a locked door? Think again. In a blackout, the most dangerous thing you can do, besides turning on a light, is opening that door. Even once. Even for a second. Doesn't matter if it's to let the cat out, grab something from the porch, or shout at a neighbor. That click, that creak, that burst of light or sound or scent, that's a trigger. That's confirmation. That's you saying to the whole street, we're still here, we're still operational, and we've got something to protect. See, most people think danger shows up with a knock, but in reality, danger is already watching. The looters aren't walking around kicking in random doors. They're marking the ones that open. And once you've opened that door, they know 3 critical things. 1, there's a person home. 2, that person still feels confident enough to move around. And 3, there's probably gear, food, and fuel inside worth protecting, because nobody guards an empty house. Nobody cracks a door to yell if there's nothing behind it worth yelling over. Want proof? Look at Hurricane Sandy 2012. In the darkened housing blocks of Brooklyn and Queens, the NYPD documented over 130 instances of break-ins that followed a very specific pattern. A door opened within 24 hours of the looting. That's not coincidence. That's surveillance. And worse. Half the time, the door was open just to check outside. No shouting, no noise, just movement. But that movement, that was enough. Because in a world where everything else has gone still, motion is a siren. So what's the play? First, treat every door like a breach point. If you need to open it, do it fast, do it quiet, and do it never the same time twice. Second, block line of sight. That means blackout curtains behind the door. No light leaks. Third, use a dead zone. Set up a shaded hallway or curtain vestibule between the door and your living space. So if someone gets a peek inside, they see nothing. Fourth, pad and weather strip the door now. Not just for insulation, but to muffle sound. That click could echo 30 feet in the silence of collapse. Develop a code, a knock pattern, a motion routine, something silent that lets your household know what's happening without words. Because every time you open that door, someone's logging it. And eventually that log becomes a plan. And that plan ends with them walking through that same door when you're not ready. 4. Using your voice. Like it's still free, talking. That's the trap. That's the one mistake nobody thinks twice about because they think their voice is just noise. But in a blackout where the background hum of life is gone, no AC compressors, no highway traffic, no TV, static. Your voice becomes a flare. A rhythmic, patterned, meaningful flare. And that's the deadliest kind. See, people aren't just listening for volume. They're listening for structure. And conversation, even whispered, is structure. It's proof of coordination. It's confirmation of planning. And if someone hears you talk long enough, they'll learn everything they need to know. Here's what I mean. You step outside, you're frustrated, so you raise your voice. You yell to your wife or your kid or your neighbor. Not loud, just enough to carry. But that moment is when someone on the second floor of a half-collapsed duplex 2 doors down perks up and hears, "We'll eat after sunset. Don't forget the fuel." That's it. That's the leak. That's how information escapes. And now you've got a problem because someone just learned 3 things. You're feeding people, you've got stored fuel, and you're still operating on a schedule. Think it's rare? In post-Katrina New Orleans, FEMA volunteers and National Guardsmen alike reported looters casing homes for audible conversations, targeting places where arguments, dinner talk, or phone calls revealed too much. Even laughing was dangerous. That's right. In neighborhoods where tension ruled the streets, the sound of people laughing was interpreted as cockiness, comfort, stability. And stability, that's a target. So, What's the fix? First, build your silence discipline. Establish hand signals now, not when it hits the fan, now. Second, if you must speak, whisper inside insulation. That means layered rooms, closed doors, white noise buffers like fans or boiling water to distort cadence. Third, avoid predictable phrases. If you always say, dinner's ready, every night at 6, you've just set a behavioral clock someone can mark. Fourth, ban yelling entirely, not even in emergencies. Train your group to stay calm, move fast, and signal instead of shout. Fifth, this one's overlooked, muffle your phone speakers. A phone call speaker at 20% volume can still be heard through drywall in absolute silence. Cut the chatter or cut the cord. 3. Making a fire that feels too much like home. You want to stay warm, I get it. Maybe cook, maybe boil water, maybe just keep your hands from freezing. But here's the reality most people can't accept. Fire is a luxury you don't get to enjoy like you used to. Not when the lights go out. Not when the stores are empty. Not when the only thing hungrier than you are the eyes watching from dark windows across the street. Because a fire, especially one that's comfortable, isn't just heat. It's a memory. And when people are freezing in their homes, shivering under moldy blankets and newspaper, the sight, the smell, and the crackle of a good fire is like a punch to the ribs. You just reminded them what they don't have. And worse, you reminded them that you do. Most people think the danger is the smoke, or maybe the glow, but they forget the psychoacoustics of fire. A 2022 study from the University of Edinburgh found that human brains are neurologically tuned to recognize the sound of fire faster than speech or animal movement. It's primal, embedded. When it's dark and you hear that telltale pop of a log, your brain doesn't ignore it. It locks in. And so does everyone else's. Even if they can't see it, they'll track it. In 2015, during the Ukraine blackout riots, urban survivors reported that people were identifying apartment units by the ambient warmth coming off balconies with fire pits. That's right. Just the heat radiating through metal rails was enough to mark homes. And then came the knocks. Not always violent, sometimes just begging, but always dangerous. Because people don't rob strangers when they're cold. They rob the people who still seem warm. So what do? First, don't build a fire you're not willing to hide. That means no open flames outside, even in your yard, especially in your yard. Second, contain heat inside, and only when absolutely necessary. Use tea lights in brick circles or small alcohol stoves with tin can barriers. Third, mask scent and sound. Burn low-smoke fuels, hardwood, alcohol gel, denatured alcohol. No pine, no paper, no trash. Fourth, insulate your space so the heat doesn't leak, because a warm window is a blinking ad in the middle of a frozen block. Don't linger. Fire feels good, but it softens you, lulls you, makes you talk. You start relaxing, singing, reminiscing. That's when your guard drops. And when your guard drops, someone waiting in the dark makes their move. 2. Offering help publicly. Let me ask you something. Who's the first person to die in every survival movie? The hero who yells out, "Is everyone okay?" The guy who tries to help? The girl who says, "We've got extra"? The ones who still believe that society is a shared effort, but in a blackout that stretches past 3 days, society is gone. Replaced by hierarchy, hunger, fear. And the second you start acting like the Red Cross with a front porch, you stop being a neighbor and start being a resource. Here's how it happens. You share a bottle of water with the guy next door because he's coughing. Seems fair. You toss a can of beans to the mom on the corner because her kids look hungry. And you think, that's it. You did your good deed. But what you don't see is the way people are watching. Not just the people you helped, but the ones they talked to. You gave one thing to one person, but it turned into a story, a proof of generosity. And in a collapse, generosity isn't admirable. It's leverage. In Venezuela 2016, when the power stayed off for weeks at a time, neighborhoods formed informal mapping rings. What were they mapping? Not the closest aid stations, not water lines. They were mapping who had what, who gave out rice, who boiled water, who still smelled like shampoo. And once the generous ones were marked, guess who got hit first? Not the hoarders, not the silent types, the helpers. Because they had stock, and they'd already proven they were willing to share. Now here's the brutal truth. You cannot help everyone. Not in a full collapse. Not even close. You help one family and 5 more show up tomorrow. You say yes again, and now you're the guy with extra. Word spreads. People show up who you don't know. They're not evil. They're desperate. But desperation doesn't knock politely. It waits until nightfall. It waits until you're alone. It waits until you say no for the first time, and then it takes. So what's the fix? First, help quietly or don't help at all. Harsh? Yes. But this isn't charity. This is triage. Second, never help from your doorstep. That's rule number 1. Always meet in a neutral area and never near your supplies. Third, don't give out packaging. Remove labels, remove brands, because someone will read that label and think, this came from a full shelf. Fourth, spread disinformation. Not lies. Strategy. Say you got it from someone else. Say it was your last one. Say you were just passing it along. Break the chain of you being the source. 1. Acting like you're not afraid. This is the big one. The mistake that doesn't involve a light switch or a trash bag or even a sound. It's the attitude, the posture, the walk. It's the calm face you wear while everyone else is falling apart. And let me be clear, confidence is lethal in a collapse, because when you move like you're ready, like you've planned, like this is just a drill, you don't look brave, you look supplied, and that means you're hiding something. That means you've got more than they do. You think you're just being cool under pressure. You're proud of your prep. But to a neighbor who's running out of food, that calm isn't comforting, it's infuriating. And worse, it's threatening. You're smiling while their baby is crying. You're checking your perimeter while they're lighting scraps in a trash can. That doesn't inspire hope. That creates division. That makes you the one who's doing fine. And if you're the only one doing fine, you're the one who needs to be taken down. 2023 South Africa after multiple days of rolling blackouts. In the Eastern Cape townships, residents reported spontaneous mob formations not because of theft, but because of tone. That's right. They attacked homes where people seemed okay, where they were still cooking, where the parents weren't panicking, where the kids were still laughing. That psychological split between your composure and their crisis broke the line. And when that line breaks, people don't ask anymore. They take. What makes it worse? You don't even realize you're doing it. You check your watch too confidently. You carry a flashlight too steadily. You tell someone, we'll be fine. You look like a leader, and leaders get followed, then questioned, then challenged, then removed. So how do you fake fragility? How do you blend into despair without actually becoming it? First, adopt the same posture of struggle as everyone else. Slouch a little. Move slower. Fumble your keys. Look sleep-deprived. Second, use tired language. Say, we're barely holding on, even if you've got a 6-month stockpile. Third, act indecisive in public. I don't know if we have enough. I hope the power comes back soon. That's the script. Fourth, never talk about plans. Planning means stability. Stability means strength. Strength is a target. Final tip, let your house look worried. Bent blinds, uncollected mail, a lawn that looks like no one's touched it. That's not sloppiness. That's camouflage, because in the end, this isn't about fear. It's about control. And the moment you stop showing fear, people assume you've taken control. And when control's the most valuable thing left in the world, they'll come to take it. You think you're invisible? You're not. You're being mapped, watched, interpreted, not by criminals, but by desperation. And desperation doesn't knock. It kicks. Every bag of trash, every crack in the curtain, every flicker of power. It's not just a mistake, it's a message. One you didn't mean to send, but now it's out there. And the only question left is who's listening. Because in a blackout, survival doesn't go to the strongest. It goes to the quietest, the ugliest, the one who vanished without moving, disappear, or get dragged into someone else's plan. No second chances, no second warnings,